because we'll chat. All right, I'll tell you one other story. So I went to church yesterday, Life Application Ministries, or LAM Church in Warren, celebrating their 25th anniversary. And it was really interesting. It's a black church in Warren, which is like from 25 years. We all know what Warren was like that. And Bishop Cast, who's this little man, not just he's not tall, but he's not big, worked at the tech center, had the gift from youth. He was he preached always. He started this out, and he just never gave up. And it's this wonderful, wonderful congregation. But they had this guy from Texas, Baylor, who won the Big 12? Baylor. So he's like he's one of the 12 big preachers of the world, or he's like this professor of preaching, all this stuff. So he gave an amazing sermon there. But Senator Bueno said, well, you must have prayed for Baylor, so you pray for the Lions. Right. So I get up there for my little, present my plaque and stuff. And I said, well, look, there's praying for Baylor, there's praying for Michigan, there's miracles, but I think it's going a step too far to ask somebody to pray for the Lions. And then they won. So I guess I'm wrong. Guess I'm wrong. All right. So this is really just exciting for me. As a member of Congress, you toil away trying to get bills passed, and I have to say that in this first year of Joe Biden's presidency, we've already passed more significant legislation than was passed in 4 years under the Trump presidency. And if the Senate gets its act together and passes Build Back Better, then that'll be way above and beyond. But the one thing he passed in 4 years was this tax scam that gave away 83% of the benefits to the 1% richest people in the country. And by the way, they did it through this reconciliation process. They had no hearings, and they didn't get a score on it. It increased the debt and the deficit by trillions of dollars. But here we are, toiling away. We passed the American Rescue Plan, which was awesome. Now we passed this Bipartisan Infrastructure and Jobs Act. Okay, I'm honest to God in favor of the bipartisan stuff. Every day I toil away at it. Like I've got my bill to reduce prescription drug prices by letting generics come to market quicker. Definitely, I had a really conservative Republican last Congress as my lead co-sponsor. He retired, now I'm going for a different one. I love that stuff. But let's be honest, a grand total of 13 Republicans voted for this infrastructure bill in the House, and now they're being attacked by their own party. It's just kind of pathetic. Anyway, we passed it with those 13, God bless them, and all the Democrats virtually, and I hope the Senate passes Build Back Better so we can, get all that done in 1 year. But this infrastructure thing in and of itself is huge. And here's the thing that I think we have to do a better job of. Not just pass this legislation, but explain what the heck's in it to the American people. And so I'm sitting here with people from different locals and District 4 of CWA, Communication Workers of America, AFL-CIO, one of the great unions of our country, who are involved in this broadband stuff. So I want you all to go around and introduce yourselves, and then I'm going to say a few words, but then I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about what the impact of this is. So you want to start?
I'll start right off. I'm Gerald Somerville, president of CWA Local 4100 in Detroit. I'm an 09er for AT&T. Been around for 21 years, give or take, and looking forward to this roundtable discussion about the laws that's going to be passed.
All right.
Jim Simons, Vice President, Local 4009, AT&T technician, and I just got my 31 years yesterday.
Wow.
Congratulations.
I'm Martin Shaliga. I'm a Vice President of Local 4108 in Saginaw, Michigan. I'm also a member of CWA's Broadband Brigade, which is a group of CWA members that are working to ensure that we have affordable, fast, high-speed internet in the country, and I'm very excited to be here to talk about that today.
My name is Dre Davis. I'm Vice President of CWA Local 4100 in Detroit. Also a 21-year technician and sometimes I work for Marty.
My name is Mike Schulte. I am a CWA staff rep for communication workers out of District 4, Michigan office. I am probably the most senior veteran for
So
for
District
AT&T
4, for
here.
people who don't know,
Yes.
Ohio, Michigan.
Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and
Illinois.
Wisconsin, the
5 states.
Midwestern states.
Awesome.
I'm Daniel Schulte. I am a construction tech for AT&T for about 9 months now. The new hire, but proud CWA member of 4009 as well.
My name is Stephen LeCorbier, Chief Steward here at Local 4009, construction tech, 26 years in the company. I do a lot of the fiber splicing and construction work that puts this infrastructure together.
Awesome. Okay, so I just want to talk briefly about the big picture, and then I want to dig into like how this actually happens and what this means for Michigan families, kids, on the ground. So this Bipartisan Infrastructure and Jobs Act, it's huge, but just talking about broadband, it's got $65 billion of investments, $65 billion with a B, and that includes about $42.5 billion of grants straight to states, $2.5 billion to support broadband in rural areas, specifically the most hard to reach, $2.75 billion for broadband inclusion efforts to promote digital inclusion, equity, and so forth, and over $14 billion to establish the affordable connectivity benefit to ensure low-income families have access. So literally, like when they can't quite afford it, to make them be able to afford it. So, what's the context of this? We've got 30 million people in this country who lack access to high-speed internet, including 14% of Michigan households. And low-income Americans, people in rural areas, communities of color are most impacted by this disparity. That's who's mostly in that 14%. And we just are going through this pandemic. We've been through it, especially the part where schools were closed, where businesses were closed. People started having to work from home. We saw that access to broadband is not like some luxury or some nice thing to have. It's essential to facilitate business, education, healthcare, right? We were struggling to expand telehealth quickly. And foster communications among loved ones who couldn't be together in person. So beyond all that, there's no way our country can be competitive amongst, against our peers or other countries in the world unless we end the digital divide and get it out to everybody. So in terms of those big national numbers I was talking about, for Michigan, we're gonna get $100 million in grants to our state to provide coverage and support for the 25% of people in the state who could receive support under that affordable connectivity benefit I talked about. So 25% of Michiganders could get help affording their broadband. And so, to me, this is why I went to Congress, was to pass laws to support the American people, to support the poor and working class and middle class of this country to have everything they need to live a good life. So let me start with you, Marty, because I understand that the Whitmer administration is looking to you as an expert in broadband technology as they develop their strategy to get this out for the whole state, to get everybody connected. So talk to us about how these investments would impact that effort. So you were already helping in the Whitmer administration on this group?
Yeah, they just asked us to provide some input, but the governor stood up a Michigan High-Speed Internet Office, which is tasked with making a plan for how best to use this influx of money, which is something we've never seen before. I mean, it's on the scale of building the telephone network back in the Bell days. So our biggest hope and concern is that we have this one shot to do this, and we want to make sure we do it right, because what's happened in the past, corporations have taken a lot of money with very little accountability and just basically propped up their current operation, which really doesn't even meet high-speed standards of Europe per se. So working with groups like Connect Michigan and providing our input, we want to make sure that any public dollars invest in fiber, which is the gold standard of internet. Some of as these techs can attest, some of our network is still from the Michigan Bell days. And although technology allows us to push internet speeds, they're nowhere within what's really needed. As the pandemic has shown, it's very difficult for a mother to have a Zoom and a child to have a classroom Zoom at the same time. And I'm not talking about like the foothills of Appalachia. I live a couple miles from I-75 by SVSU University and by the Dow World Headquarters, and I can't get high-speed internet. So,
at your house?
Yes, at my house.
Oh.
So we share a cellular jet pack, and we have to take turns to get work done. And you know, I'm not somewhere, you know, that's beyond reason of providing that. There's just a lot of corporations choose not to because it's not profitable. So what this office aims to do is map where we have a significant need, which is most of the state, and make sure that we invest it properly, as well as use local labor that are the experts in this, that have been doing this, vice some overnight contractor that'll, you know, potentially do shoddy work and leave the area. So that's our concerns, and we feel if we can follow through with that plan, you know, every Michigan resident will have access to affordable, true high-speed internet.
Is this, that's profound that you said this is like a one shot to build this out, like when they were doing the telephone lines 100 years ago or whatever. Is this isn't enough money, is it, to do
No.
like the whole state completely?
No, it's not. I think it's a great start to start building the backbone, but it's a very significant amount, and if spent wisely, it can have a great effect for the majority of Michigan residents. Of course, you know, there's less of a return on investment for companies to build out the electrical grid or the phone grid, but they did it, and it's a huge driver for the economy, and you know the benefits will be reaped down the road, but you have to get it right. We have to be able to compete, and it's just it depends on good union labor, the newest technology, which is fiber, and with those things in place and support from Congress, there's no reason we can't get it done.
So, Daniel, speaking of these new jobs, like you hired on fairly recently, right?
Yes,
Is
March.
Does this have anything to do with it? I mean, will this first phase of your career be involved with this? Is this investment, like, are you a symbol of it?
I am. I'm a
Really?
direct result of the
Really?
start of this fiber build. At
So
least in
tell
the
us
state.
about it.
So being at the start of it, with them having to push, as he said, they just at a certain point were just lacking in service, and having to build back this backbone, going into fiber, it opened up spots for new union jobs to develop, in which I saw the opportunity and I seized it to get in. And as you say, it builds like this past, it only furthers us to keep not only open more jobs for people like me, but for people like me to keep going on and spend their entire career here, or at least spend their time here actually making living wages and doing a job, doing it right.
So, and this is a union job.
Mm-hmm.
Which local are you part of, you said?
Part of 4009.
4009. And does anybody have an idea, like, how many union jobs this might create, just even in Michigan, or just even this area?
So for Michigan, AT&T, just in the construction and engineering side of the house, which is responsible for the broadband build, there will be nearly 200 additional jobs, which Danny is part of them. So they're already almost close to that figure. I think right now in Michigan, AT&T has hired about 147 technicians.
So that's
to do the work.
just in Michigan, just AT&T,
Just AT&T, yes.
200 good union jobs.
That's their goal, is 200. And then throughout the Midwest, that number is approaching closer to 800 if you include all 5 of the Midwestern states.
Wow, that's awesome. That's terrific. So let me ask you, and then others too, a question, because, you know, the dominant thing people think of, I think, if you say, oh, access to broadband or high-speed internet, they think of rural areas. And that is important, and that's true. And I understand how you know, if you live down the end of some dirt road and Gogebic County way in the middle of Upper Peninsula way over there, you know, it must be an issue. But there's a lot of lack of access in, you know, our urban areas, our suburbs, whatever. Talk to us about that. You're like are you on the school board of Warren Woods?
Yes, I'm on
Okay.
school board for Warren Woods Public Schools.
Okay, I know about Warren Woods. That's in the heart of the 9th District. That is not, that's in, you know, inner suburbs of Detroit.
Right.
So talk to us about the impact of this on that community.
Yeah, I mean, to Marty's point, certainly the pandemic has really brought forward, you know, either the lack of accessibility or the lack of affordability for broadband services. And we've seen that with our student population with the pandemic and so many of the kids on the onset working from home or doing student virtual. Where the district, and many districts, not just Warren Woods, but all throughout the metropolitan Detroit area, had to come up with, you know, laptops and provide, making sure that our students had access to broadband if they didn't in their homes, which would be by purchasing hotspots for kids who didn't have access, or purchasing it for kids who didn't have the financial means, their family didn't have the financial means to connect. So I think the pandemic has really brought forward this huge push for broadband, and what's been talked about for 10 years is finally coming to fruition. So it's been a really big thing.
So if 25% of Michiganders might have access to this like affordability help, it sounds like a lot of those families in the Warren Woods school system would be included in that.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, yes, we have a larger amount of children in our population who you would never have thought would not have had access or affordability. It's surprising, and that's what I said, again, the pandemic has really brought this forward.
And what about the city? You know, you all have members, Local 4100, 409. You must have members. And you serve you work in the city. You know, talk about the justice issues involved in this. Anybody?
Okay, well, I'll speak on that, Congressman. I live in Detroit, in the city, actually, in the Mark Twain school district. And we have when the pandemic came and then everybody was forced to go home, we had tons of children, hundreds, that had no access to affordable internet, simply because it's not available out there in the area where I stay by the Marathon plant, not too far from there. So we're very much we're on the outskirts, the city limits of Detroit, and there's no service out there whatsoever, let alone affordable health care, doctors you can go to. There's no service whatsoever. We got kids that actually go to other individuals' houses. This is during the pandemic, so you in close proximity going to other people's houses just to get on the internet so they can get on the school. And you know, and once you share the internet services, stuff slows down. You got to wait for one to do the other. Like Marty said, you got to wait for one to do the other. And this shouldn't be in this climate where we live today in the United States. We shouldn't be lagging behind other countries when we're basically the top country in the world.
People love to say we're the greatest, but in that neighborhood,
in my neighborhood where I stay at, when a child has to come knock on my door, my kids are grown and gone. So 2 or 3 say, you know what? My nephew goes to Mark Twain. We don't have access. Well, guess what? You got access today. You come on in here and you use my service.
So is the service physically available to everybody, and it's purely that they can't afford it, or do we need to build out?
We need to build out to make it fair, to make affordable service fair. Because right now in our area we have a monopoly. There's only one provider in our area. So whatever the price is. There's no competition there. As opposed to like that would be for a mother and father child that happens to be on government assistance or whatever, government assistance, it's just like getting a $50 cell phone from the government. That same access should be for broadband care, because how are our children, who are the future generation coming up for us, how are they going to succeed and get ahead if they don't have access to the same services that other people have? It's just not going to work.
It's not a level playing field.
Yeah.
And the scales like this. Right. We need the scale like this.
You wanna weigh in?
And so to Marty's point earlier, when he said that a lot of the internet that we got working now is working on very old plant. It's just very old. It's outdated. It's not working very effective. We definitely need the fiber build. That's why they brought people like Danny on to build the fiber out. So we definitely need this done immediately, because in some other areas where internet is available, it's still just not fast enough. I'm going to people's houses, they have 2 different providers because they got, multiple kids and they're working from home. So everybody's on the internet at the same time, and I really feel, for what he said, my niece actually goes to Saginaw Valley State, and it's crazy to me to think that you're that close to a major university and you don't have access to internet, and when it comes to affording it, these people are, luckily enough they're working, but they have multiple kids going to school, they're paying 2 different internets, that can get quite expensive.
It's funny Dre says that, because I am a household who has 2 internet providers.
So,
Because
wait,
one
so-
provider did not provide enough bandwidth for my wife, myself, my 2 kids at the time who were still studying from home, as well as my daughter, all of us to be online, working from home, doing virtual. So we had to get another provider in, because the first provider was maxed out, so we brought another provider in so that we could split that up. So I mean, that's just
I
to
didn't
show
even
you.
think of doing that.
Because some providers
I
have.
got 4 kids, and everybody came home.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they were kicked out of their colleges, right?
Right.
So my high schooler was home. I got 3 in their 20s. There's 6 of us all of a sudden trying to use the internet. I would run away, go to my congressional office because I needed the bandwidth.
I think that's my exact
But that's
situation.
insane that all these people are having to do that.
Don't understand why we're, it's patchwork.
Okay,
That's all we've been doing.
but break this down for a layperson, which I am and none of you all are. So for a regular person, like the speed at my house, if I don't have fiber versus if I do, what's the difference?
Oh, my Lord.
Well,
It's a major difference. The speed over the traditional landline, it's capped. It only has an ability to go at a certain speed. And so you need the fiber in order to take you to that next level, because like you're saying, you're doing video conference call, you're doing Zoom, and everybody's doing that all at once. And then that way, if you have the fiber access to there, everyone will be able
What's
to.
the difference?
So,
Give me an example.
I think our signature copper product, which is very limited in distance from a certain point in a neighborhood, so you can't just say Warren has it. It's which
Right.
house on which road has it.
Yes.
That's about 100 meg down. And the way the companies do it is they figure that it's mostly for entertainment, so they want you to be able to take more bandwidth than you're sending. That doesn't work on a Zoom because you're sending
Right.
your video.
Right.
So what they're doing is asynchronous. It's on balance. You get 100 megabytes down and 25 up. That would be the gold standard for copper.
Okay, so 100 megabytes
Yeah.
down, 25 megabytes up. Then
But
what if
for
I have
fiber?
fiber?
It's 1 gig, so it's 10 times that.
10 times.
A gig is 1,000.
Yes.
1,000,
Yeah.
10 times
Okay,
that.
going.
There's
What about
you can have it either way.
Either
Yeah,
way.
going even
both
direct.
ways,
Both ways.
or is it 500 each?
No,
No,
both ways.
both ways.
So there
Okay,
won't
wait
be
a
any
minute,
lag,
wait a
there
minute.
won't be any pixelation.
Wait a minute. So okay, so
I mean,
there's
and that's just
100. Which way is the 100? 100
Down.
Down. Okay, I'll call it
Yeah.
down.
Down.
And
coming
25
up.
up, which is
Upload,
upload, right?
yeah.
Okay.
And that's
upload.
not what we have. That's our
That's
goal
the-
right
That,
now.
that would
That'd be the
be
gold
ideal
standard,
for
ideal
someone
setup
to
you want
get.
for everybody.
A more,
Okay,
a
that's
more
the- what's the-
reasonable one right now is about 25
25 down
and
and probably
5
5
up.
or 6 up.
That's on average.
That-
Most homes that are in a good area
Right.
can get that.
And so if one person gets on there, you're fine. But if you
This
have a
is
whole
explaining
family,
my life.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, but then what's with fiber?
Fiber, there's no limit. The only limit on fiber is the equipment on
The
the end.
equipment.
So if they want to make it 1 gig, that's easy. We
Yeah,
have
1
that
gig.
equipment now. 1,000 up, 1,000
But
down.
what is there a similar like realistic thing? Like you said, 100 down
No,
and 25
we
up
have-
versus 25 down 5. What do I really get? Do I
That's-
really get
it's
a
1 gig? Yeah,
1 gig.
that's not a problem. That if you
Oh.
have fiber to the home or fiber to an apartment building, or fiber to an office, 1 gig is just the
Okay, now, if I lived in Norway or Italy or some other I mean, are we really behind these other countries?
Yeah,
Or-
they've had our definition of high speed has been so low. I mean, 10 years ago they surpassed us in just the definition of high speed. We've been calling high speed something that was obsolete in early 2000.
What if you took all the advertising money that Verizon, AT&T do about how great they are and to put all that into actually building? Maybe we could afford that. Okay, I won't go there.
I mean, that's
I mean,
true.
how much do they spend?
Yeah,
That's
in
true
advertising,
for-
yes.
like, they're-
Yeah,
You know, I'm better than them. No, I'm
Right.
better than them.
right.
That's
And put it
true for
into
their
the plan.
best neighborhoods and very limited areas. That's very true. They do have 1 gig, but it's I mean, you can literally point to the homes that can get that because.
All right,
it's so
does anybody
distant.
know what percentage of Michiganders or whatever have access to this now, the fiber, or the good stuff? About what would it be?
Well, if you took your local's footprint, we have techs working on copper. I mean, some new neighborhoods started getting fiber, the green builds, right?
Yes.
What would you say is the footprint just for this area?
Oh my God.
Would you say it's the majority?
A majority of this area has access to it. I would say probably 30%, maybe something like that. I mean, that's why they hired additional staff here to help with the build, and because
Okay,
it
this
wasn't
show-
there
wait a minute.
before.
This shows how outrageous this whole thing is. We're sitting here in suburban Detroit.
Yes,
This is like the good place in terms of access.
Well, this is
supposedly.
not rural, right?
and this is
Right.
not rural.
It's not rural, and it's not the city either, where there's a
Right.
lot of neighborhoods that are
Right.
just completely overlooked and not, you know.
Yes.
So, I understand downtown may have great stuff, access or something, but,
Right.
so you're saying only 30% even here has access to fiber?
Yeah, and about 0 where I'm from
Yeah.
in mid-Michigan, in Midland, Saginaw Bay City.
Which is still one of the more populated areas of the
And
state.
just for clarification, it's fiber to the prem,
Fiber
which
to
would be
the-
fiber to a person's home or fiber to their apartment, right? Some providers bring fiber to a section of the neighborhood and it's still carried out on a copper infrastructure to the home, which
slows it down.
which slows that
Like a-
speed
like a
down.
hybrid.
So there's gonna be,
Right,
providers are gonna say,
hybrid,
oh, we
yes.
have fiber in the neighborhoods, but it's not fiber to the prem. So
Right.
that's the thing we gotta be
What are you
significant
saying,
about.
prem?
Premise,
To the-
fiber
premise
to
to
the
the
premise,
customer.
fiber to the
Oh,
home.
premise,
In other words,
my-
the fiber, if you have a fiber optic drop that comes to your home, just like you have a copper cable that comes,
Right.
or a coax cable that comes from a provider, this would be a fiber drop that would come to the
Your
home.
100 by 25 or 25 by 5, that would be the hybrid fiber
So that
to
would
the
be within-
neighborhood and then on
Yeah,
copper to your house.
There'll be a box in the neighborhood that has fiber, and then a certain distance, the copper signal drops fast. So homes around it will get it, but not. But
Got it.
You're
And,
talking hundreds of feet. Is how it's measured.
And I think the last time they actually did some sort of any build was, I think the main focus was how many units can we get done quickly.
Yes.
So it was more or less focused on some of these apartment buildings where we could get 300
Got it.
units.
Customers
Yeah, because I
quickly
think
for a
at that
small
time we were
investment.
still receiving some money at that time and we had to reach a certain level. And those were quick hitters, bring fiber
All
in.
right, but so what this conversation really, to me, what it says is we got huge justice issues in this country. But really, what we did here in this Infrastructure and Jobs Act is just kind of the basic stuff we should be doing to build out the guts of infrastructure in our country to function, to be competitive,
Competitive,
to
with
be,
the world.
yeah,
Right.
Even
yeah.
if Congress said, let's give everybody a gig because we're behind, we can't. We don't have the
Well, they don't
network
have the
built.
network out there.
We have a 1900s network
Yeah.
that we're
But
using.
this will go a long way. This isn't like, it's somewhere, it's far from everybody. It's far from every house in the state, every neighborhood. But it's also far from being like a little pilot project.
Yeah.
Right.
This is a significant, making a significant dent on what we need to do.
Our biggest
Correct.
concern is the money's used to prop up the old network instead of just cutting ties and making investment in the next generation. Because that's what's been happening. Every little inflow we've gotten for broadband, it's just been used to make the old a little bit better
A little bit
instead of making that initial.
So that's just like saying, you know how we have like no high-speed rail in this country, and when we put some little bit of money in, they make like the Acela a little bit faster. It pisses me off. You know, in China, they have tens of thousands of kilometers or miles of trains where they
Be
go
real.
350 kilometers an hour. That's 210 miles an hour.
Mhm.
And we're like, oh, the Acella's going, 120 miles an hour instead of 110 for 15% of its stretch. We're like, woohoo!
Right.
But as an American, I mean, people throw around the word patriotism. It makes me mad because they're like wrap themselves in a flag and say like want some past time that they say was great.
Right.
It's a false sense
But
of patriotism.
it is. Let's do what it takes to raise up our country. So we're doing it a big chunk of it here, not fully, but
I'm going to use a word that I think is almost like a dirty word for a lot of, it's called regulation. I think we need to focus on broadband services like we did when we built the electric grid, right?
so what do you mean?
Make it a utility. Have expectations, state by state, what those requirements of these providers have to have, right? Have to have as a standard, to Marty's point, a gold standard, not just band-aiding an existing network to get by, right? Set a standard state by state of, by 2025 or
Okay,
2030.
now, break that down. Does the MPSC, does the Michigan Public Service Commission have the power authority to do that right
They
now?
do not at this time. They have,
And that's
telecom
because
has
of
been
state
deregulated.
law?
Yes.
State law.
That's it. The legislature in Michigan stripped the MPSC of any regulatory rights over telecom or internet at this
And
point.
that was years ago, like
And that was years ago.
when
They
Engler was governor or something?
And
Or?
slowly, they eroded it piece by piece. Every time the Telecom Act came up for revision, instead of getting better, it got worse.
So now could Congress also, for the whole country, say, look, we're giving this money out and it's gotta be used this way?
Well, I
Could we
guess
have-
that's probably a question I would ask you. I mean, with the FCC, I know the FCC had oversight when they built the telecom network back in the 30s.
Yeah.
Right, and that's when the FCC was formed, my understanding. I think there is a bill that a state legislator here, Darren Camilleri, introduced a regulatory bill
For the state?
for the state of Michigan to
Yeah.
give back some authority to the MPSC so that there could be some regulatory
Okay, but so
oversight.
let's study this. Let's make a pact right now. Hopefully I'll survive in Congress and be around. You are on this statewide group working on this.
I'm
You all are
providing
behind
input,
them.
yeah.
Let's really study what happens here and how much the money is really used to do, build out fiber the way it should be, and how much of it is or whether it's instead used to Band-Aid it out, and then because that could be the basis for legislation in Congress to say, okay, that was cool, what happened, and we created hundreds of good union jobs, got a lot more people connected, but if it turns out it wasn't ideal because we allowed the money to be we didn't have enough enough specific rules around how the money was used, we can, think about it for next time. So that's for our next, when we come back together after a couple of years, and you all tell me what actually happened.
What happened?
Yeah, I'm serious.
Yeah.
We got to commit to doing that.
Yes.
Because this is, you all are educating me and you're educating really the American people about what really happens here. So there's a lot of good questions, but the bottom line is, this is creating a lot of good union jobs, right?
It's certainly a step in the right direction.
Yes,
And I mean,
definitely.
we just
Definitely.
talked about AT&T. I mean, there's cable TV providers. There's and there are also a lot of them are represented. So I mean, when we say hundreds of jobs, that's just from our perspective. There's going to be, not to mention the supporting elements of it. Production of the equipment and maintenance, and so but I think it's time to get away from the idea that the internet is for entertainment. It's not. I mean, it's essential. There's no longer an option to do some things in person, especially with COVID.
It's a way
And
of life.
It's a way of
It's a
life.
way of life.
And it's like you mentioned before, it is an injustice to leave kids behind just simply because they don't have access to it. It's not a level playing field. We're really falling behind.
What number did you give us earlier? How many people right here in Michigan didn't have access? You gave a number earlier.
Well, 14% don't have any broadband.
At all.
And then a lot of people must have the
Substandard.
The
Yeah.
substandard, where they call it that for
Yes.
their like advertising purposes.
Yeah, we
but
gotta
for
stop calling it broadband.
yeah,
It's
for
not what we
practical,
have.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, for practical purposes.
And wireless is not really the solution to that also. You know, like, you have to have a line coming to your home in order to sustain the services that you want to try to do over that. So a lot of times they're into wireless,
Or satellite.
that or satellite or something. It's not as reliable. We're in Michigan. We have snow. We have overcast. You have anything.
Trees, everything.
Trees, everything. So to have that hard line coming in is
Okay,
is
and what about so 5G is what they talk about, right? But if
Yes.
that's really highly, I mean, the little I understand of 5G is like in the few places right next to it, they could have this like super duper thing, but for most people, it's not like that. It's
Right.
not a replacement for.
No, it's not a replacement. It's another Band-Aid in a way, and it's possible that you might have it. It's going to be pretty expensive if you do have the 5G service. So if you have the fiber optics coming into your home, that means everyone in your home will have that access to that speed, more dedicated, reliable, steady speed, that they don't have to worry about obstructions preventing them from getting on the whatever services they need over the internet.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is huge. I just feel like, I want to stay in touch. I want to look at what the actual build out is. If I can help along the way, I know Mike will call me, but if it seems like things are going in the wrong direction, we could have a little oversight. If the money doesn't seem like it's being spent, even if we didn't, it's one thing to say we should have written it more specifically. Okay, that's on us. But, in the way life goes, if the money isn't being spent in a smart way, I think people, the media, the public is going to want to know about it, and we still have leverage to tell the story and say, wait a minute, we're a year into this, they're not doing it, the right way, and so we want to follow it closely, and I'm going to count on you all, because the information that we get from parties that have interest in it and the companies and stuff, I'm all happy to talk to them, but I feel like you all are the source of the real information about what's going on. So
I'll tell you what's going on.
And I just want to say, I'm encouraged to see where we're headed. I mean, because this is a significant investment, and it's the most I've seen, and I'm speaking for AT&T because that's what all these gentlemen work for, right? It has been significant, certainly much better than any federal dollars that have ever been utilized previously. So I just hope that they stay the course.
yeah, yeah. No, we should definitely celebrate, this start, and I feel like this is really a question of who we elect in office, because the previous president talked about infrastructure every year, never got it done. And now it seems like, unfortunately, it's harder for it to be even bipartisan. But, under Joe Biden, we got this passed. And for, roads, for bridges, for broadband, for EV charging stations, for so many other things, we're going to have water, safe drinking water, replacing lead lines, and water treatment plants and stuff. We're just going to be in, it's sort of like broadband is one area, and then each of these other areas, we're really putting a lot of resources into infrastructure for the first time in a long time. And it's going to create a ton of good union jobs in every single one of those areas, whether it's more, IBW and in the building out the EV chargers, or UA or other unions in the water infrastructure, and of course all the heavy highway unions in the bridges and the roads. I mean, it's all different unions, it's all different kind of workers, but it's good jobs that can't be exported, and that's what the way to rebuild our country, keep us competitive, and build up the middle class. So just got to keep on going. All right, any last words? This has been so great for me anyway. I learned a lot, and I've got people watching. I've learned a lot. So
Well, I just want to say thank you for everything you do for us, and even with the Build Back Better Act, we know how much you stressed the importance of some of the language in that bill, hopefully it gets to the Senate. That's good for labor, good for organized labor, good for workers. So we appreciate everything you do.
Well, you're welcome, but I have to say, I mean, CWA is as big a champion for all the rights of all workers as any other labor organization in this country. And I think what we did was smart, and it better pass the Byrd rule, because the only parts of the PRO Act that we put in there are the parts that raise money. We're just the fines on employers when they violate workers' rights.
Right.
That is about raising revenue, and it specifically does that. We didn't put all that other policy in there, which we desperately need to pass. We just put the financial related stuff in. So I hope it passes. And most people don't even know, we also put 10xing the penalties for violating health and safety rules, and significantly increasing the penalties for violating wage and hour rules. So it's like the right to organize, and then everybody's like basic rights to a safe workplace and not to have your wages stolen by your employer and all that kind of stuff. So I hope it makes sense what we did,
It does.
but we were really intent on trying to be smart about it so that it works for this weird reconciliation process we have to use, because we won't get one dang Republican vote to pass this stuff. So, all right, Jenny, are we good? Hey, let's all wave to the
Take a picture.